Hello there. Today we're going to talk about one of the most fundamental human struggles there is. It's this quiet war that's fought inside of us every single day. It's the battle between our deep, ancient need to be liked and that little voice inside that just wants us to be, well, us.
I mean, you know the feeling, right? You have a thought or an opinion, maybe a piece of art, or just a photo that feels truly you, and you're right there, about to share it, but then it happens. That little voice creeps in, that cold wave of anxiety that just whispers, what will they think? Will they like it? Will they judge me? Do I even belong here?
That feeling isn't some modern weakness or a bug in your system. It's actually a deeply hardwired survival instinct. For literally tens of thousands of years, our ancestors' survival depended completely on being part of the tribe. Acceptance meant safety, food, protection. But rejection? Rejection meant being cast out, all alone. And our brains, they have not forgotten that lesson.
And that ancient fear, well, it brings us to the heart of what we're exploring today, our hunger for approval. We're going to look at how this totally natural desire for connection can quietly build an invisible cage all around us, a prison made entirely out of what we think other people expect from us. Psychologists actually have a name for the bars of this cage. They call it normative social influence. It's a bit of a mouthful, but all it really means is that powerful, unspoken pressure we feel to go along with the group. Not because we always believe what they believe, but because we want that social reward of acceptance. And maybe even more, we want to avoid the pain of being rejected.
So let's get real. How powerful is this pressure? I mean, how far will we actually go to fit in? Well, it turns out one of the most famous experiments in psychology set out to answer that very question.
So, picture this. It's the 1950s, and a psychologist named Solomon Asch designs this brilliantly simple test. He asks people to do something really easy. Just match the length of a line to one of 3 other lines. A piece of cake, right? But here's the catch. The real participant is sitting in a room full of actors, and those actors are all told to start giving the same, obviously wrong answer. The test wasn't really about eyesight at all. It was all about social pressure.
And the results? Well, they were pretty shocking. When people were faced with a group that was totally unanimous, a huge number of them went along with it, giving an answer they knew was wrong just to fit in. But now look at this second bar. This is where it gets incredible. Asch found that if just one other person in the room gave the right answer, a single ally, conformity just plummeted. The power of the crowd wasn't its size, it was its unity. A single voice of truth can set us free.
Now you take that ancient pressure and you supercharge it with our modern world. Today, that invisible cage isn't just invisible, it's gilded. It's covered in likes and shares and comments. This constant feedback loop of social media just amplifies our need for approval into a 24/7 performance.
The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre had a great phrase for this. He called it living under the gaze of others. We get so aware that we're being watched that we start performing a version of ourselves that we think the audience wants to see. Sartre's whole point was that you are not your job, you are not your social media profile, you're not just one of your actions. But man, is it easy to forget that.
And this brings us to a really crucial distinction, one that the researcher Brené Brown talks about so brilliantly. On one side, you've got fitting in. That's when you change who you are just to be accepted. And it is exhausting because you're basically betraying yourself. But on the other side, that's where you find true belonging. And that's the magic of being accepted for who you are, weird parts and all. Our hunger for approval tempts us with fitting in, but what our soul really craves is belonging.
And the cost of this is staggering. And it's not just personal. Take a look at the workplace. According to Gallup's global data, a jaw-dropping 85% of employees are either not engaged or actively disengaged from their jobs. And a huge reason why? Workplaces become cultures of fitting in, where being liked is more important than being honest. When people feel they can't speak up or be themselves without risk, when there's no psychological safety, they just check out.
Okay, so we've seen the cage, we've talked about the costs. The big question is, how do we find the key? And this isn't about becoming some kind of rebel without a cause. It's simply about finding the path back to ourselves, a path to authenticity. And believe me, it's more accessible than you might think.
First, let's just be clear on what we're aiming for. Authenticity isn't about being perfect. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It is the courage to be your messy, imperfect, genuine self. It means your life is guided by your own internal compass, your values, not by constantly checking a poll of what everyone else thinks. So, How do we build this authenticity muscle? Well, it starts with 3 small but really powerful steps. First, we just notice. We just become a gentle observer of our own mind, and we acknowledge when that fear of what people think is pulling the strings. Second, we practice small acts of courage. You don't have to start a revolution here. Maybe it's just voicing a slightly different opinion in a meeting, or setting one tiny boundary. Every small act is a win. And third, we redefine what success looks like. The goal is no longer to be liked by everyone, because that's impossible, but to build connections based on real, mutual respect.
But all of this, it really rests on one core foundation. Before you can ever be free from needing other people's approval, you have to first approve of yourself. The psychologist Carl Rogers called this unconditional positive regard. It's just the simple practice of accepting your own basic worth, just as you are, with no conditions and no judgment. That's where true freedom really begins.
And you know, when you start to build that foundation of self-acceptance, when you practice those small acts of courage, something really profound starts to shift. You begin to step out of the cage and into the incredible freedom of just being you.
And the rewards, they're immeasurable. Your relationships get deeper, more honest. Your creativity and your courage just expand because you're not so afraid to fail or be different anymore. You start to feel this powerful sense of purpose. Sure, criticism might still sting a little, but it doesn't have the power to define you anymore. You gain this quiet confidence to live a life that is truly, deeply your own.
The great Maya Angelou put it so beautifully. She said, "If you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be." You see, normal is just another word for fitting in. It's another word for staying inside that cage where it feels safe. But your amazing, unique, powerful self, it lives just outside that cage, just waiting for you to be brave enough to step out.
Ultimately, that really does come down to this. That constant, desperate need to be liked is an invisible chain, and it holds you back from your own life. True freedom isn't about never feeling fear or getting criticized. It's about the integrity, the wholeness, and the profound peace that comes from daring to just be you.
You know, centuries ago, Shakespeare gave us the ultimate compass for this journey, and it feels truer today than ever before. This above all, to thine own self be true. That isn't just a nice idea. That is the work of a lifetime, and it is the greatest adventure you can ever embark on. Thank you so much for joining me.